Welcome to Overtime of Days, where we talk about relevant construction topics in the industry today. I've got our president, Matt Ellis, with us today. Matt, thanks for making the time.
Of course.
So we're talking about CMMC today. Now, this is something that if you haven't heard about it, you probably need to look it up because it is a game changer specifically for us and a lot of people in the construction industry, specifically the federal government. And so we thought it was very important for us to do something on this to not only share what we're doing as ACE, as a company, but also just where this is headed and how long it's been talked about. So, Matt, why don't you explain a little bit about CMMC,
Okay.
Give us a little history, because there is a ton of history, because this was a big uproar a couple of years ago, and now it's actually happening.
Right. Yes. So we've been talking about CMMC now I know that we've been talking about it internally for at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I've heard rumblings that it's gone back as far as 2015. It's even a decade old.
Wow.
Which is understandable. I think we can recognize that from a cybersecurity standpoint, we are weak. And the whole point of this, the whole point of CMMC is to put a framework in place to make people more compliant with cybersecurity risk. But we have been talking about it for a long time. It's gone through a ton of different iterations. It was supposed to be official in 2020, and then it was supposed to be official in 2021. So every year, but with all that being said, it is as official as we've seen it in its history right now.
Right.
To the point where and we can get into it a little bit later,
Yeah.
we're actually even talking to some clients that are seeing it in some contracts as a requirement now. So we do believe that the timeline is real now. It's a real thing, and it's going to be really impactful. So getting ahead of it is pretty crucial.
And so talk a little bit about the levels. So there's 3 levels now. There used to be 5.
This whole premise came about because when you talk specifically to the construction industry, I think when you say cybersecurity, people inherently are going to think about an IT firm or a software firm or someone that has some kind of intricate connection with the federal government.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is that it's very, very easy. You register for a SAM account and you can go and get, by and large, any blueprints and specs.
A lot of information.
Yeah. A lot of information. Now, granted, there are top secret projects that you can't just go get that information. That's fine. But nonetheless, a foreign adversary can very easily go get the very detailed layout of a lot of the buildings and things that are on our military installations, which is problematic. So this aims at its core for the construction industry to kind of put a halt to that. Let's put some parameters in place so that you have to do these XYZ things in order to check the boxes for being compliant. So we know that, somebody behind a computer in another country is not able to just go and get all this stuff. So that's the why behind it all, which is understandable. National security is
very important.
Very important. Yeah. In terms of the levels of CMMC, now it's 3. It did used to be 5. But again, we've gone through what feels like 100 iterations of this thing, and it's, all back and forth. They went from 5 levels to 3 levels to try and simplify it a little bit. So there was literally a level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Obviously, level 1 being the route to the easiest compliance piece, and then level 5 being maybe for someone that might be handling some more sensitive in nature type documents or something like that. And in an effort to simplify it, they busted it down to 3 levels. So now there's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast and you're having to go down the road of CMMC, probably level 2.
I was about to say probably everybody.
For most of your construction,
at least a level 2.
At least a level 2.
Yeah.
For most of your construction entities, most suppliers and subcontractors, general contractors should fall within that level 2. Now, when you start to get into more of the sensitive nature projects, that's where you could be looking at level 3 and having to really take another set of measures in order to get yourself compliant.
Okay, so now that we've kind of went through what it is, different iterations, you mentioned it earlier, some of our clients are starting to see it in solicitations. What do you think the effect on the construction industry specifically is this going to have?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to have a major impact and a major effect on the industry. We've written some letters to, our congressional representatives and tried to get the understanding behind it. But also, as we've gone down the road of doing this, and we'll get into a little bit of what we've done, as we've gotten down this road, we've discovered this is a very expensive process. And so, we tried as a small business to go to our representatives to say, hey, are you all prepared for what this could potentially do to a lot of these small businesses? A business that operates in, a $2.5 to $5 million or $5 to $10 million range may not have the cash laying on hand to dump $75,000, $100,000 into getting CMMC compliant right now. And that's and basically what what our what Congress has said is you've had 5 years to prepare for this. Tough. And so, and they're not wrong. They have been talking about it for a while. I would argue that we haven't been official for quite some time.
Yeah.
But we have had enough time to prepare for it that's kind of what they're saying. Tough. But in terms of its impact, I think if you start at the top and you start with an A&E firm, right, they are going to have to be CMMC compliant. They're going to get an RFP or an RFQ or a rough order of magnitude from the federal government. If it's a design build, for example, that's going to have this is what we're looking for, and these are the parameters around what we're looking for. Well, then they're going to start building and designing what that would look like, and passing that back and forth. They're going to need to be CMMC compliant, because then that makes its way out onto the web, and boom, you have a conceptual drawing for what this important building might look like. So you start there with your A&E firm. You move down to your general contractors and your subcontractors. If I'm a big federal general contractor who 80 to 90% of my work or more is in the federal government world, this is the bullseye on your back. I mean, It is what it is. And I think the piece of you'll hear the word CUI, controlled unclassified information. CUI, drawings, specs, anything associated with bidding a project, essentially, amendments, all that kind of stuff. In order to handle CUI, you have to be level 2 compliant. There is a level 1 where you can self-assess, but if you're operating in any capacity where you could access or need to handle CUI, you're going to have to be level 2. So again, that's why I said you have a huge bullseye on your back if you're a general contractor, because you're going to be handling CUI. There's no doubt about it. You're not going to be able to bid a job without looking at the drawings and the specs and all that kind of stuff. As you go further down the line, and where it gets really complicated is when you get into your supply chain. Because now, I'm John Doe General Contracting, and I'm going to go bid on a new, squadrons operations facility at a military installation. I'm going to put my set of drawings on my plan room, my virtual plan room, and invite all my suppliers to go on there. Yep. I got to solicit a concrete bid. I got to solicit a steel bid, a roofing bid, whatever it might be. Well, my roofing subcontractor is going to turn around and go to his metal roofing supplier, who is going to need to do what? Open the drawings, open the specs. Domino. I need to go into the spec section. I need to go into and do my quantity takeoff, and I have the CUI in my hands. And so, and you think about that, and like it starts with this pyramid with an A&E, and it's a very few up here, and as you go down, it just gets massive on the amount of people that are going to be impacted, companies, I should say, that are going to be impacted.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if you're level 1, it's pretty safe to assume you're going to be doing very minimal.
Correct.
With the government specifically. You may be able to do other stuff, but as far as government contracting is concerned, you're going to be, if you're not level 2, it's going to be minimal at best. It could be good for some companies. It could be really bad for others that this has happened, and it is official, because it's going to weed out a lot of people. And the amount of people that are bidding on things is probably going to be slim. So talking about preparing, and you've mentioned the money before, talk a little bit about what we've done at ACE to do this, because to your point previously, we've kicked this can down the road for a long time,
right?
Because we were on the forefront of it when we very first heard about it, and we dug in deep until we were like, this doesn't look like it's actually going to happen,
right?
And so we kicked it, and then they did a different iteration, and then we kicked it a little bit farther. And we are fortunate that we are in a position where we have the ability to actually do this, because ultimately this has been like an internal project in and of itself, where we have multiple people with multiple ownership over certain types of things to try to make this happen in the correct manner. But talk a little bit more about that and the cost associated with it.
Yeah, and again, that's where it gets really really wild. They have kind of aligned level 2 with NIST 800, which NIST 800, not a cybersecurity expert by any means, but NIST 800 is a cybersecurity standard that's been out there for a while. It is pretty in line and pretty lockstep with NIST 800. So it's not completely foreign to people if they've, flirted with that before.
Right.
That said, we, in terms of preparation, generally speaking, your first thing to do is get your assessment. You're going to need an IT company. We used our IT company for this. Yeah. You're going to need an IT company to come in and do a self-assessment on you, or a gap. You can call it a gap analysis. You can do an assessment, whatever. But they're going to come in. They're going to look through all your systems and procedures. You know, what kind of security protocols do you have on your internet, or maybe you have a VPN, or maybe you have internal servers. It can go 1,000 different ways depending on what you're doing. But they're going to come in and look at all those systems and procedures that you have in place. And from there, they're going to, okay, in order to be compliant, here are the things that you need to do. And that's what our IT company has done for us. They've kind of put together essentially a roadmap, and that would kind of be your next step. And that's having all the right documentation. So you got to have the right plans and documentation, the right training regimen, so that you can train on those plans and documentation. It's about that recurrent, just like a first aid CPR or a sexual harassment training. It's going to be something that you're going to have to do every year. And so making sure that you've got the right documentation in place to do that. So then once you've got that, your roadmap, you've got a cost associated with each one of those line items, then it's here's where we're going to start checking the boxes. And we need a month to do this and this and this. A lot of money in software cost, but I don't want to give away a specific dollar value because I think it matters the size of your company.
Yeah.
A lot of things
what
there.
work you do.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that it's probably going to be measured in the tens of thousands of dollars. And so, and again, a lot of it is in softwares and multi-factor authentication and things like that. So you get your plans, you get your softwares, you get your people trained, you get all your documentation, you do all that. And then finally, you have to have an auditor come in and audit you. And the interesting thing about an auditor is it cannot be someone from the person or the entity that got you compliant. So we've checked all the boxes on getting compliant.
Another third party.
Yeah. And they're in short supply. And when someone's in short supply and demand, what do? We jack the price up. And that's what we've been hearing, is that an auditor to come in and audit you, is going to be measured in the tens of thousands of dollars. And B, our IT company is telling us that the scuttlebutt they're hearing is that they're already booked through January of 2026.
So it's a time thing too.
It's
like a huge time thing. It gets to the point where 90% of federal contracts have CMMC requirements, and you don't have an auditor on the book, essentially you're out of luck.
Correct. You could be in a pickle. And that kind of ties in with the last part, and that's doing it now is of critical importance, and getting that there. We've had a couple of clients already. We've been trying to ask our clientele, hey, are you guys on the CMMC train? Are you guys heading down that path? And a lot of people are, and that's a good thing. But we've also had clients that have called us. We had a client that called the other day, and they had the verbiage in their solicitation documents that unless they had been audited to be level 2 CMMC compliant, they could not even submit a bid on this particular job. And we had heard that they were going to start picking some contracts to roll this out into. I believe that it's November, December timeframe that it's going to start becoming a contractual requirement. But this particular company called us 2 weeks ago. The bid was due May 5th. It's not possible. There's not enough time there to get compliant, get an auditor, do all the things you need to do. So he was going to have to forego even bidding on this job in that situation. And that kind of leads me to my other point. We have seen a lot of, I guess you would call it advertising, get CMMC compliant for, I'm going to make up, $99.99 or something like that. I would just caution the viewers to be careful with something like that. I do think that there are going to be people that are going to capitalize on the market, and we'll get you CMMC compliant. We'll provide you a certificate, but are you really CMMC compliant? Because then the other half of this is if once you get a third-party auditor, now the federal government is going to start using third-party auditors and themselves to come in and audit your company. And so if you get an audit and you're not compliant, fines could be measured in tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So as much as it really, really hurts as a gut punch right now, spend the money to go with someone that knows what they're talking about and can actually do it and get your company actually compliant. A, because it's a national security thing. We should be doing it anyway. But B, it could cost you substantially more down the road. So don't take shortcuts on this. I think is the message.
Yeah, do your research.
Correct.
better if you even know the people.
Right.
If
Exactly.
you have a relationship with them already, which a lot of companies do have an IT company,
Right.
maybe they could do it, or have at least refer somebody that they know.
Correct.
And you said tens of thousands like 3 times.
That's right. Yeah.
Add that up if you want. But it is not a small sum of money to make this happen. And it's going to be even more if you're trying to expedite it.
Correct.
Which we even may be a little bit on the
We could be
on the slow end of getting started with this, but I think we're in a pretty good spot right now after we got all of our assessments and everything done there. So future in the construction sector, I know you mentioned it. We're talking about it being a contractual requirement and it no longer being an option. It is now here, and it's not going to get rolled back anytime soon, you think?
No, I don't think it's going to get rolled back. I think I wanted to be the pessimist, and seeing how many times it's kicked down the road. You mentioned it earlier. We've had several discussions in our budget planning sessions where it's like, nah, there's no chance this is going to happen in 22. We're not even going to budget for it. Not going to happen in 23. Not going to budget for it. Well, the time has come now. We've kicked the can down the road long enough. The federal government appears to have dug their heels in. Is there a chance it could change? Yeah, I think so, but I think it's pretty far down the road. And even if they did change it, I think it's just kicking it down the road a little bit longer. I don't think it's going away. We're going that direction. It's just a matter of if it's this year or next. And my money's on the fact that it's going to start happening this year, early next year. So in terms of what the future looks like, I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Do people start to pull away from federal government contracting? We have clients, I mean, our niche is in federal government construction. We have clients who almost exclusively deal in VA hospitals or national parks or just any kind of federal job. Is that company going to completely change course and pivot to a commercial sector? I don't know. I do suspect that it could weed out a lot of contractors, maybe small businesses, maybe large businesses that don't want to fool with it. I don't know, but I do have a bit of concern there over what that could potentially do, and maybe make the competitive bid market even more competitive from the federal government side. So instead of having 15 people go after it and trying to get lowest price technically acceptable, now you've got 3 contractors that are eligible to go after it. So I think more of that will come out as we get a little closer and people start getting audited. I think some of your giant firms, your several $100 million and multi-billion dollar in revenue firms, are pretty far down the road and probably have positioned themselves well. Like I said earlier, my bigger concern are the companies that are from maybe $1 million to $20 million in revenue, with a significant piece of that tied up in federal construction. Talking the tens of thousands of dollars worth. Pretty big.
Tight there.
Cash flow's tight. We all know that margins are tight in the construction industry. Something has to give at that point. And what gives? You don't hire because you got to get CMMC compliant. You can't grow. It's snowball effect. So.
Well, it sounds like it's something. Well, and even when you were talking earlier about when I asked the question about it ever changing, I mean, you look at the M385. We heard for years that there was going to be, they were going to update it. They were going to update it. They were going to update it. They finally did, but how many years did that take? So now that it's here, even if they do update it, who knows how long it's going to take for them to actually do something like that. And until they do, it's going to be what it was previously, which would be where we're at right now.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for the time, man. We really appreciate it. Anybody out there, if you need help with CMMC, we are not the experts on CMMC, but we can definitely help in any way that we can, talk to you about what we're doing, what we're seeing. We go to conferences all the time up in DC. We do talk to our congressional people. So we have a little bit of insight in regards to that. And we're in the people business. We're in the relationship business at ACE. So we want to help you, help your company, help your projects be successful. So as always, thank you guys for listening. Work with experts, work with ACE.